Hi guys, so Ed Miliband was standing in for Kier Starmer today because Kier Starmer had to self-isolate, but he was on fire. I would actually be very interested in seeing more from Ed Miliband. Now, in this speech he gave to Parliament today, he destroyed Boris Johnson. Now, I'll leave a link to the original video in the video description so you can watch all of it, and I do recommend watching all of it. I'm just going to focus on a small part, which I think is extremely interesting. So let's hear what he had to say.
It's not overturning the protocol that is the right thing to do, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's upholding the protocol because of Article 16. And don't take my word for it, Madam Deputy Speaker. Take the word of the former Attorney General, who definitely read the protocol, and who wrote this morning, and I quote, "There are clear and lawful responses available to Her Majesty's government." And then, and the Prime Minister tried to slip this in, I don't know whether the House noticed, there is an irony here, which is that, as if this wasn't enough, this bill does precisely nothing to address the issue of the transport of food from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. It is about two issues where they're going to override international law. It's about exit declarations, Northern Ireland to GB, and the definition of state aid relating to Northern Ireland. Now, if the Prime Minister wants to tell us that there's another part of this bill that I haven't noticed that will deal with this supposed threat of the blockade, I'll give way to him. I'll very happily give way to him and tell me, he can tell us. I'm sure he's read it. I'm sure he knows it. I'm sure he knows it in detail because he's a details man. Come on, tell us what clause protects the threat that he says he's worried about GB to Northern Ireland exports. I give way to him.
Well, the right honourable gentleman can't give way unless he's asked to.
Okay, unfortunately, Ed Miliband can't give way to the Prime Minister. But it is interesting to look at Boris Johnson's face. Boris Johnson obviously has not read the Withdrawal Agreement. Boris Johnson has obviously not read the Northern Ireland Protocol. Boris Johnson is being told what to do by the likes of Dominic Cummings. It would have been interesting for Boris Johnson to actually stand up and respond, but of course he would not respond. He would start talking about, oh well, your party was undecisive on Brexit and we got Brexit done, and so it would be a pointless exercise for Boris Johnson to actually stand up and respond, because he would not respond. So, but it is interesting to see him squirm. He's sitting there like a child who has been told off by their teacher.
There you have it. He didn't read the protocol. He hasn't read the bill. He doesn't know his stuff. Right. Let's deal with the second bogus argument. Second, he claimed on Wednesday it was necessary to protect the Good Friday Agreement. That's the first outing for this was on Wednesday at Prime Minister's questions. I have to say to him, I'd rather trust the authors of the Good Friday Agreement than the Prime Minister, who has prominent members of the government who opposed the agreement at the time. But this is what John Major and Tony Blair wrote. The bill, oh, they don't like John Major, I know. The bill puts the Good Friday the bill puts the Good Friday Agreement at risk because this is very serious, because it negates the predictability, the political stability and legal clarity that are integral to the delicate balance between the north and south of Ireland that is at the core of the peace process.
And he's right here. There is a huge risk by undermining the Withdrawal Agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol that could see border checks being put in place between the EU on the Ireland side, or the Republic of Ireland side, and border checks on the Northern Ireland side, which is part of the UK. Now, any type of physical border checks are against the Good Friday Agreement. So you would be undermining the Good Friday Agreement. Why? Why would that be undermining the Good Friday Agreement? Because it's part of the document that there should be no physical infrastructure that impedes the flow of people and goods across those borders. And let's say, for example, the British government say, well, we don't care about that part, we're going to put in our border posts anyway. Well, they would become targets, like they were in the past. Now, who the hell wants to go back to that? The Northern Ireland Protocol and inside the Withdrawal Agreement defends against that. That is the insurance policy against border posts or requirements of that kind. What Boris Johnson is doing is he's undermining the insurance policy. He's replacing the fire extinguisher behind the glass shield with a fake fire extinguisher, and telling people, yeah, don't worry, it's still a fire extinguisher.
These are very important words from two former Prime Ministers both of whom helped win us peace in Northern Ireland. And he may not want to believe them, but he will, I hope, believe himself. Because this is what he said. This is what he said. Maybe not. Because this is what he said about the Northern Ireland Protocol, and I quote, "There are particular circumstances in Northern Ireland at the border that deserve particular respect and sensitivity. And that is what they have received in the deal. It's a great deal for Northern Ireland." I don't understand this, Madam Deputy Speaker. He signed the deal. It's his deal. It's the deal that he said would protect the people of Northern Ireland. And I have to say to him, this is not just legislative hooliganism on any issue. It is on the most sensitive issues of all. And I think we should take the word of two former Prime Ministers of this country who helped secure peace in Northern Ireland. I will give them.
And he's right. And now what he's going to do is he's going to give way to Sammy Wilson. And I have something to say about Sammy Wilson in a moment.
The shadow spokesman for giving way. Before he lectures the Prime Minister about reading documentation, and he starts lecturing us about the Good Friday Agreement, does he recognise that, first of all, the Good Friday Agreement talks about the principle of consent?
The irony of Sammy Wilson standing here talking about the Good Friday Agreement. Now, you're probably, what's the problem with Sammy Wilson talking about the Good Friday Agreement? Sammy Wilson is part of the Democratic Unionist Party, the DUP. They refused to support the Good Friday Agreement. Sammy Wilson was one of those people. It's not like Sammy Wilson joined the party after. Sammy Wilson was one of those people who refused to support the Good Friday Agreement when it was first formed over 20 years ago. Now you have Sammy Wilson lecturing the temporary leader of the opposition about the Good Friday Agreement. Really?
About changing the constitutional position of Northern Ireland, which this protocol does. And the Good Friday Agreement has within it...
No, it does not. Please explain, Sammy, where the protocol changes the constitutional status of Northern Ireland.
A mechanism to safeguard the minorities in Northern Ireland through a cross-community vote, which again the protocol removed. So before he starts talking about the threats to the Good Friday Agreement, does he not recognise that the protocol was a threat to the Good Friday Agreement in the first place?
Actually, no, it wasn't. But you know what what is a threat to the Good Friday Agreement? Brexit is a threat to the Good Friday Agreement, which the DUP support.
The honourable gentleman didn't like the protocol at all. He'd rather have not had the protocol. He and I just have a disagreement on this issue. I believe that it was necessary to make special arrangements for Northern Ireland or for the UK to be in the EU Customs Union to avoid a hard border in Ireland. Now that's why the Prime Minister came along and said the protocol was the right thing to do.
So once again, Sammy Wilson is attacking Ed Miliband over the protocol, but Boris Johnson signed up to the bloody protocol. Boris Johnson said this is an oven-ready deal. The protocol is part of the Good Friday Agreement. Sorry, it's part of the Withdrawal Agreement. Boris Johnson signed up to that. Boris Johnson promoted it. He spent millions of taxpayers' pounds promoting his get Brexit done, oven-ready deal. And people seem to be able to just turn around and say, well, we can ignore that. He won a general election because of his oven-ready deal. And now he wants to dismantle it and ignore the other side who signed on to that withdrawal agreement, the EU.
Let me deal with the third excuse that we've heard, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is the "it was all a bit of a rush" excuse. Or as the Prime Minister said in his article, times were, quote, torrid and there were serious misunderstandings.
So this is, yeah, Boris Johnson's face is perfect here. Boris Johnson said it was all a bit of a rush to get it through Parliament. What happened was Boris Johnson's government created legislation with their majority to not allow, to stop, to block members of Parliament from reading the Withdrawal Agreement Act. So they stopped members of Parliament from reading it, and now Boris Johnson is saying, oh, we didn't actually get a chance to read it. Ian Duncan Smith was one of those people who voted to not allow members of Parliament to read the Withdrawal Agreement Act. And then just about a week ago, he was complaining that, well, we didn't have a chance to read it.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Prime Minister tries to pretend this is some new issue, but they've been warned for months about the way the protocol would work. The Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, who's sitting in his place, was warned at the Select Committee in March and was asked about these issues. The Business Secretary was written to by the House of Lords Committee in April. And let's just get this straight for a minute, because I think it's important to take a step back. What the Prime Minister is coming to this House to tell us today is that his flagship achievement, the deal he told us was a triumph, the deal he said, as I said, that was oven-ready, the deal on which he fought and won the general election, is now contradictory and ambiguous. Madam Deputy Speaker, what incompetence, what failure of governance. And Madam Deputy Speaker, how dare he try and blame everyone else? Can I say to the Prime Minister, this time he can't blame the Right Honourable Member for Maidenhead, he can't blame John Major, he can't blame the judges, he can't blame the civil servants, he can't sack the Cabinet Secretary again. There's only one person responsible for it, and that's him.
Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. So I'll leave a link in the description to the full video. I recommend watching it. But Boris Johnson has no one to blame but himself. He talked about firing Dominic Cummings when they got Brexit out of the way. Of course, Brexit is it out of the way yet? But Dominic Cummings is still there. Why is Dominic Cummings still there? Because Dominic Cummings is pulling the strings. Dominic Cummings is the one who seems to be in charge. Boris Johnson is paraded out in Parliament to make excuses for why things are not working. But Dominic Cummings seems to be the one who's in charge here. Now, will this pass? Will this bill pass? It's unknown at this moment. There is a rebellion building in Parliament within, and very importantly, within Boris Johnson's own party. And it requires them to bring this down. Now, unfortunately, I think the fact that previous Lord Chancellors have come out against this, Attorney Generals have come out against this, legal experts have come out against this, constitutional experts have come out against this. Even after all of that, there's still a risk that this will pass. I hope that it will be defeated in the House of Lords, but it's not guaranteed. Boris Johnson wants to break international law. Let's be clear about this. He's undermining Britain's reputation on the world stage by doing so. Even if this is blocked, even if this doesn't actually get signed into law, or on law. I don't know how you would put it. But even if it doesn't get signed into law, it has still damaged the UK's reputation on the world stage. We can only hope for the best. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?